This industrial monstrosity has no place in our neighborhood. I've had complaints from 12 homeowners.
It's a sterile lab for medicinal mushrooms. The work here is part of an Alzheimer's clinical trial.
Medicinal mushrooms. You are growing fungus. It's disgusting, and it has to go.
Put that out. The ventilation system draws air from this room. One spark could ignite everything.
Sparks. You are being absurd. It's just a cigar.
The lit cigar clattered into the ventilation intake. Instantly, a jet of flame burst out of the grate. Tyler grabbed an extinguisher, but the fire was already racing through the ductwork, feeding on the sterile filters. Brenda stumbled backward, her face pale in the firelight. She turned and fled as the lab became an inferno. Tyler stood helpless, watching the growth chambers crack and melt, 11 years of work reduced to ash in minutes. By the time sirens wailed, the mushroom farm was a smoldering ruin. The Alzheimer's trial's only drug source was destroyed. The last fire truck pulled away at dawn. Tyler returned alone to the smoldering ruin. He knelt in the ash and found the charred Pfizer contract, the exclusive supplier clause still legible.
He called Michael Chen. Michael, it's Tyler. The lab is gone. The cordyceps strain is destroyed.
Michael's reply was ice. You are telling me the sole source of our Alzheimer's drug just went up in smoke?
Yes, every growth chamber. I am holding the contract. There's nothing left.
Sarah, you are on speaker. Tell Tyler what you found.
I've confirmed it. The strain is extinct. No backup cultures survived the fire. We're suspending the trial. There's no other source. We'll make the announcement today.
That afternoon, Pfizer officially suspended clinical trial 4872C. The Alzheimer's drug was gone. Tyler stood in the ruins, the weight of 11 years settling on his shoulders like the ash. Detective Harris arrived before the embers cooled, crouching by the vent to pull out a half-burnt cigar.
Mr. Reeves, does this look familiar?
Brenda Whitfield was smoking it when she stormed in. She threw it into the ventilation intake.
Security footage confirmed it. Brenda flicking the lit cigar directly into the vent seconds before ignition. Brenda was brought in for questioning, still wearing the magenta blazer from that afternoon.
This is ridiculous. I didn't think a cigar could cause a fire. It was an oversight.
You won't think it's ridiculous when you are charged with arson. Your reckless act destroyed a clinical trial.
Charged. Over a cigar? That place was an eyesore. I'd do it again.
You just admitted to intent. That's arson. The FBI is already involved.
The detective closed his notebook. Brenda's arrogance was now evidence. 2 days later, Tyler met with Michael Chen and Sarah Patel. The burnt contract lay on the table.
Pfizer is filing a $40 million lawsuit. The exclusive supply clause makes the loss quantifiable. We'll freeze every asset. Brenda Whitfield owns. She won't have a dime left.
The strain took 11 years to develop. It's gone. 200 Alzheimer's patients have no treatment now.
I read their charts every month. Some families called me to say their loved one recognized them again.
Before he could continue, Janet Morrison entered, FDA badge visible, clipboard in hand.
The FDA is investigating. Destruction of a clinical trial is a federal crime. We'll subpoena every record, ventilation schematics, safety protocols, your correspondence with Pfizer, and if we find negligence, criminal charges will follow the civil suit.
Tyler looked at the burnt contract, then at the FDA seal on Janet's clipboard. The legal avalanche had begun. That evening, the story broke. News vans circled the smoldering farm. The headline called it, "The Cigar That Burned Hope." Inside her home, Brenda drew the curtains. Her phone buzzed with notifications. Strangers, journalists, death threats.
Brenda, what have you done? I just saw the news. A $40 million lawsuit.
It's a zoning dispute, David. They're blowing it out of proportion. Those people are lying.
Zoning dispute? You burned down a medical lab. 200 Alzheimer's patients lost their treatment.
I didn't mean for that. It was an accident. That freak had a ventilation system that sucked in air like a vacuum.
David's voice dropped. Is there anything else you haven't told me? Mom gets confused lately. Have you visited her?
What does Mom have to do with this? I am the HOA chair, not a criminal.
The police are calling it arson. The FDA calls it a federal crime. You are in serious trouble.
Brenda ended the call and sank onto the couch. The silence was worse than the shouting. Outside, a news reporter's voice echoed from the driveway. Late in the Pfizer office, Sarah Patel combed the trial database for any connection to the Whitfield name. She'd been doing it for hours. Then she found it. Evelyn Caldwell. Emergency contact. Brenda Whitfield. Daughter, the Alzheimer's patient. Brenda's mother.
No, this can't be.
She pulled the HOA records Tyler had gathered. Brenda Whitfield, mother, Evelyn Caldwell. It was undeniable.
Tyler. It's Sarah. Get back here. You need to see this.
Tyler arrived, still wearing the lab coat, reeking of smoke.
I checked every connection. Brenda Whitfield's mother is Evelyn Caldwell, patient number 87 in our trial.
She burned down the lab, producing the drug for her own mother.
She doesn't know yet, but the trial suspension means no more doses. Your strain is gone, Tyler.
They stared at the screen, the weight of the revelation settling over them like the ash from the fire. Detective Harris called Brenda back to the station. The interrogation room felt smaller this time.
I've got the full list of clinical trial patients. You destroyed the drug that was keeping 200 people alive.
He slid a paper across the table. Brenda glanced at it, dismissively.
One name I want you to see. Evelyn Caldwell, 72, advanced Alzheimer's.
Brenda's face went white. Her hand trembled as she reached for the page.
Evelyn Caldwell. That's my mother. No, this can't be. What have I done?
She was in the trial. Your actions suspended her treatment. The drug's gone.
Brenda's composure shattered. She buried her face in her hands, a guttural sob escaping. Through the mirror, Detective Harris watched the woman who'd been so arrogant just days ago crumble into nothing. The care home called David at dawn. Evelyn had stopped eating, stopped speaking. The medication was gone.
Mom is slipping away because of Brenda, because she couldn't stand a mushroom farm.
David drove to the jail, guilt and rage boiling inside him. He didn't sit when Brenda came to the glass.
She's in the ICU, Brenda. Your fire put her there. Every day she's worse.
I didn't know. I didn't know she was part of that trial. Please, David.
But no apology could change her condition. The doctor entered her room with a grim face.
What can I do? I'll give up the HOA, the house, everything.
There's nothing you can do. I am filing for conservatorship. You've lost her.
David turned and walked out. Brenda's shouts turned to sobs as she pressed against the glass. That night, Evelyn's chart was stamped critical. David began the conservatorship petition. The lawsuit hit the courthouse like a bomb. Michael Chen filed $40 million in damages before the ink on Evelyn's critical stamp was dry.
The criminal complaint is official. Arson, reckless endangerment, and federal obstruction of an Alzheimer's trial.
Tyler was still sifting through insurance forms when the process server knocked at his temporary office.
A subpoena. They're calling me to testify about the strain, the lab, the patients.
The trial was scheduled in 3 weeks. Brenda Whitfield would be in the defendant's chair.
She burned 11 years. She burned her own mother's hope. How do I testify without sounding like a monster?
Michael called to confirm the charges carried up to 15 years in prison. The FDA had added their own referral.
Don't let pity cloud your testimony, Tyler. Justice for the patients requires the full truth.
Tyler stared at the burnt contract. The weight of 200 families pressed against his conscience. He placed the subpoena beside Evelyn's clinical file. The legal machine was turning, and no one could stop it. He went to the jail not knowing why, only that he had to see her face before standing in court. When she shuffled to the glass, the magenta blazer was gone, just a hollow woman in prison stripes.
I spent 11 years on that strain. 11 years. It was a door back to who they were.
Brenda's shoulders shook. She didn't speak, just stared at her trembling hands.
Your mother was patient, 87. Her recognition scores were climbing. She was getting better.
She was getting better. And I ended it. My mother, oh God.
I know you didn't know. That doesn't undo what happened. but I needed you to understand what was lost.
Her sobs filled the speaker. Tyler looked away, fighting his own cracked composure.
I came here for anger, but all I feel is grief. For the lab, for her, for the patients.
He walked out without another word, the weight of her destruction pressing on his own chest. In a storage unit 3 miles from the burned farm, Sarah opened a freezer that hadn't been inventoried in 5 years.
Tyler, I found cryovials. They're labeled Cordyceps milleri, batch 4, the backup you thought was lost.
The vials were frosted over, their contents partially thawed during a power outage 2 winters ago. But some cells might still be viable. Tyler burst through the lab doors 20 minutes later, still in his smoke-stained coat.
Show me. If even one culture survived, we can restart the line.
They worked through the night, thawing and plating the fragile mycelium.
Cellular respiration is nearly flat. Maybe 1 in 1,000 cells might be viable. It's a lottery.
11 years of work hanging on a frozen gamble, but it's not zero.
They fed the cultures, controlled the environment, and waited. The odds were brutal, but hope is a stubborn thing. In the stillness of the lab, surrounded by glassware and desperation, Tyler dared to imagine the trial resuming. Janet Morrison arrived at the secondary lab unannounced, clipboard in hand and an ultimatum on her lips.
The FDA will give you 6 months to produce qualified cordyceps. After that, the trial is permanently closed.
6 months? The backup cultures are barely viable. That's not enough time.
Then I suggest you work fast. 200 patients are waiting.
That same afternoon, Evelyn's vitals crashed. The care home called David, their voices urgent.
She's not responding, but she was stable yesterday.
The doctor's voice was grim. Without the trial medication, her progression has accelerated. We're running out of options.
I am filing for emergency conservatorship. Brenda will not make another decision for Mom.
He signed the petition, his hand steady. The courthouse would receive it within the hour. 2 countdowns had begun. One in the lab where hope was freezing fast, and one in a hospital bed where time was running out. The courtroom was quiet as David Whitfield approached the bench, his emergency petition in hand.
Your Honor, my sister's reckless act has accelerated our mother's condition. She can no longer care for herself.
The video screen activated. Brenda Whitfield appeared from the county jail, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her eyes hollow.
Evelyn's doctors say without the trial drug, she may not recognize us by next month. Brenda's choices did that.
I won't oppose. I have no right to decide for her anymore.
The judge asked if anyone wanted to speak on Brenda's behalf. A silence filled the room. Then the judge signed. The conservatorship was granted, giving David full authority over Evelyn's medical care. David took the signed order. He would make every decision now.
I've destroyed everything. My mother will never see my face again without seeing the fire.
The video feed cut. Brenda Whitfield sat alone, her mother's fate now in her brother's hands. Weeks passed in the secondary lab. Tyler and Sarah ran test after test, but the cryovials yielded only dead cells.
The contamination is too advanced. Every plate shows necrosis. There's nothing left.
11 years, 200 patients, 1 cigar, and it's over.
Pfizer headquarters received the final report. Michael Chen authorized the permanent suspension of the trial.
Clinical trial 4872C is officially terminated. We'll notify the families tomorrow.
At the care home, Evelyn's doctor entered with a quiet expression. The new medication was only palliative. The doctor's note was brief. Patient no longer responsive to any therapy. Recommend comfort care only. David signed the hospice papers. He didn't cry. The tears wouldn't come.
I've failed them. I've failed her. The strain is extinct.
In the lab, Tyler covered the last Petri dish. The blue glow faded. All hope was gone. The criminal trial began on a gray morning. Brenda Whitfield rose in a prison jumpsuit, her hands cuffed.
I plead guilty for arson, reckless endangerment, and obstruction. I accept full responsibility.
The loss is $40 million. 200 Alzheimer's patients lost their treatment. This was not an accident.
The court heard statements from families whose parents no longer recognized them. Their grief filled the room. Then Tyler Reeves took the stand wearing his lab coat. The burn scars on his hands were visible.
I devoted 11 years to that strain. It was the door back for patients like Evelyn Caldwell, but her daughter didn't know. She made a terrible mistake, and she's paid with everything. I asked for leniency.
The judge's face was stone. She ordered a week's recess before sentencing, citing the need to review all materials. Brenda covered her face with her shackled hands. Tyler stepped down, his testimony complete. The gavel fell. The courtroom emptied. Brenda was guilty. Her fate now rested in the judge's hands. In the days before sentencing, Tyler sat at his desk, pen in hand.
Maybe this will help the judge see the whole picture.
He wrote for an hour, detailing Brenda's remorse and the weight of her dying mother.
David, I wrote a letter to the court. I asked for leniency for Brenda.
You did what? After everything she destroyed?
I know what she did, but I also know what she lost. She didn't know about Evelyn.
David fell silent, his anger battling his own guilt.
You are a better man than I am. But your letter won't bring our mother back.
That evening, Tyler delivered the letter to the court clerk. It would be part of the official record. And later, Tyler and David shook hands, a silent truce between two men who had both lost everything. The sentencing hearing convened on a cold Monday morning. Tyler sat in the gallery, David beside him. Brenda Whitfield was led in. Her prison jumpsuit faded, her eyes red from weeping. She faced the judge without hope.
This court has considered the severity of the loss. $40 million, 200 patients, a mother's dying days, but also the defendant's remorse and the victim's plea for mercy.
The judge paused, her eyes moving between the defendant and the gallery. The room held its breath.
I sentence you to 8 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 4. May this time be a reckoning.
Brenda's knees gave way. She clutched the table, a sound escaping her like a wounded animal.
8 years. Not the maximum, but her mother might not survive the week.
David looked at Tyler. There was no forgiveness in his expression, only the barest acknowledgement. The gavel struck. Brenda was led away, her sobs echoing off the cold stone walls. Tyler watched her disappear, then turned to David. They walked out together into a world that was now permanently different. 3 days before she was to report to prison, Brenda was driven to the hospital under guard. Evelyn lay in a bed by the window, her eyes open but unfocused. She didn't turn when the door opened.
Mom, it's me, Brenda. I am here.
Evelyn's gaze remained on the window. No flicker of recognition crossed her face.
I am so sorry. I didn't know. I burned it all, and now you're leaving because of me. She doesn't know who I am. She's already gone.
Minutes or hours later, the heart monitor's steady beep turned into a single, unbroken tone. A nurse quietly declared the time. Evelyn Caldwell was gone.
I killed her. I destroyed the cure, and I killed my own mother.
The guards took her back to the van. She would report to prison, an orphan, carrying the weight of a fire that would never go out. 3 days after Evelyn's death, David Whitfield organized a small funeral. He placed a photograph of her on the podium.
I failed her too. I never made Brenda visit. Now we're both orphans.
Tyler received a thick envelope from a family who'd been in the trial. Inside were letters from 5 others. One read, "Even though the trial ended, your fight gave us months we wouldn't have had."
Months. Not enough, but something.
That evening, Tyler went to a community vigil for Alzheimer's. Candles flickered against the dark. David stood beside Tyler. Neither spoke. They just watched the tiny flames. Nobody mentioned Brenda's name.
This is what's left. Not a cure, just people holding light for what's gone.
The vigil ended quietly. Tyler and David parted without words, but they understood each other now. The public storm was over. The private one had only just begun. Tyler stood in the cleaned-up secondary lab. The silence was a blank canvas, not a void.
I can't bring back the cordyceps, but I can start a foundation. For Evelyn and for the others.
He called Sarah. She came to the lab that evening, her grief still fresh, but her eyes alert.
I am in. I need this to mean something.
They hung a photograph of Evelyn Caldwell on the wall. The lab became the Evelyn Caldwell Memorial Research Foundation.
At a small conference, Tyler announced it. The foundation will pursue Alzheimer's research. We start with one lab, but we start.
Sarah agreed to be co-director. They shook hands, a new partnership forged from the ashes.
We can't bring her back, but we can try for the ones still waiting.
The fire didn't kill the science. It just changed its direction.
He adjusted the focus, and the work began again. Months later, a letter arrived at the foundation office. The return address was the State Correctional Facility. Inside, Brenda's handwriting was careful. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know. Your mercy gave me a reason to remember my mother as something other than Ash. Tyler paused, the weight of the words settling in his chest. The letter continued. I accept my sentence. I lost my mother, my brother, my freedom, but your plea meant I didn't lose myself entirely. Thank you.
She's paying for it every day. That's enough.
He placed the letter into a file box labeled Cordyceps Research, archived. It rested beside the burnt contract.
The fire destroyed the past, but the foundation is building something else.
In her prison cell, Brenda placed her pen down. The calendar on the wall marked 4 years until parole. The letter didn't change the past, but it closed a wound. Tyler returned to the lab, where new cultures were already growing under blue light. The new lab hummed with quiet purpose. Tyler lifted a petri dish to the light.
A different strain, not the one that burned, but it's alive.
He adjusted the focus, his hands steady. The burn scars had faded to thin white lines.
The fire didn't take everything. It just changed what I am fighting for.
The small lab was modest, but it was his. On the wall, Evelyn's photograph had been joined by others, patients, colleagues, letters. He sat down and began writing in a notebook. The work continued.
Some days the guilt still comes, but so does the curiosity.
He returned to the bench, pipette in hand. The blue glow lit his face. The ash had settled. The science had changed, but Tyler Reeves was still here, still watching cells divide under the microscope, building one culture at a time, and he would keep building.